The narrow gate, the kingdom, and how to act on his word. In Matthew 7:24 we read, "Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and acts upon them may be compared to a wise man who built his house upon the rock. And the rain descended, and the flood came, and the winds blew and burst against that house, and yet it did not fall, for it had been founded upon the rock. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and acts upon them." So Jesus is talking about some words he has been speaking about, and it is about acting on these words. Acting on these words is like building in a house with a very firm foundation. We can say Jesus is the word, but that is not yet the point. He is a foundation, he is the rock, and on him we build our house, yes, but he's talking about words that have been spoken. Who hears these words of mine and acts upon. The question is now, which words are he referring to? We go back a few verses and come to Matthew 7:13. And actually everything in between is directly referring to these words. It is all part of the teaching on the mountain, but this is the last part of this. Now, on Matthew 7:13, "Enter by the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the way is broad that leads to destruction, and many are those who enter by it. For the gate is small and the way is narrow that leads to life, and few are those who find it." So he's talking about the narrow gate and the gate that is small, and the way is narrow that leads to life. And there's another way, a gate that is wide, and the way is broad, but that one leads to destruction. In verse 15, he continues now with some advice to be aware of, some challenges, some difficulties that may come along the way, on your way, when you're going to enter the narrow gate. That is, beware of the false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, and inwardly are ravenous wolves. Okay, but we go further down, and then he's saying in verse 18, "A good tree, even so, every good tree bears good fruit, and the bad tree bears bad fruit," which is referring now to these prophets who are coming in sheep's cloth and are actually ravenous wolves. So a good tree, now he's describing the good tree and the bad tree. A good tree cannot produce bad fruit, nor can a bad tree produce good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. So then you will know them by their fruits. And now is making another explanation. What is the fruits? Not everyone who says to me, "Lord, Lord," will enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Now we are talking about entering the kingdom, and this is equivalent to enter by the narrow gate. So the good fruit, which everyone is producing from a good tree, avoiding the pitfall of dealing with false prophets. We are here, enter the narrow gate and enter the kingdom of heaven. Now, what is the requirement for that one? To enter the kingdom of heaven. he who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. And now he is explaining a little bit more what can be a misunderstanding at that moment, referring to the will of the Father. What is a will? Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name cast out demons, and in your name perform many miracles? And then I will declare to them, I never knew them. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. So these are the words Jesus is referring to when he says, therefore everyone who hears these words of mine, which is immediately following afterwards. So the critical thing here seems to be, what is the will of the Father? Because he says, not everyone who says, Lord, Lord, not everyone. There will be people who say, Lord, Lord, and they will enter the kingdom, but there are also people who say, Lord, Lord, performing miracles, prophesying, casting out demons in his name, and they say, Lord, Lord, and they are not doing the will of the Father. So this is a critical point at this moment. What is the will of the Father? If we want to know what the will of the Father is, or how to get to know it, we go to Romans 12:2. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what the will of God is, that which is good and acceptable and perfect. So there has to be a change of the mind, a renewing of the mind towards the mind of Christ, to understand the will of God. Jesus said about himself, I came to do his will. He did not want it to have the Father, God. He does not want to have sacrifices. He's looking for those who do his will. And this is what he did. And another clue to what Jesus is really talking about here is actually in verse 7:23, when he says to those who will not enter the kingdom, and then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me. I never knew you. Now, if you understand, in the Hebrew, to know someone is not a superficial thing, it's only very, very intimate. In fact, we read it, Adam knew his wife, Eve. So every time when a man and a woman, they are married, coming together, that is knowing each other. That's on a very, very deep and intimate level. And the same is true, Jesus and his bride, because this is all a picture to the true thing, the most intimate thing, Jesus and his bride. To know, and he says, then his bride he will know, but the others he will not. He says, I never knew you. There was never that intimate relationship. What is a real intimate relationship based on? That is love. And we read in the Song of Songs, love is as strong as death. In the Hebrew, you can also say love is stronger than death, but it is translated as love is as strong as death. Why is that so? Jesus defeated death. He took the power of death, which is the devil. He was representing it, who is coming with death, who is going to destroy, to steal, to murder, and to destroy, to bring death. He has taken him the might, the power, but he's still there. And then we read, the last enemy that will be caught, that is death, when everything is coming under the feet of Jesus. Now you may wonder, what are the feet of Jesus? That is you and me. Because we are his body, he is the head. And we are together. We are part of this body. We have actually been baptized into his body. We are part of it. And we are the one who bring it under his feet, which is actually under our feet. And then death will be out. The devil he will no longer have any effect anymore. So again, therefore, everyone who hears these words, now if we are everyone who understands what is said here, he will build a house on a great foundation. The foundation are these words. Jesus is a word. So you can say we're also building a house on Jesus, on this relationship with him, and understanding his words and honoring his words, and understanding and acting upon it. Build a house. This house will remain. This house will remain any kind of judgment. On this house, we transgress directly from death to life. We transgress we are taken over from a dominion of darkness into his kingdom.